The snow fell hard on Christmas Eve in Hillsborough, turning the wealthy neighborhood into a postcard that nobody would ever mail. Mara Vance sat alone on a frozen park bench, her dark skin glistening with melted snowflakes, her body curled against the biting wind. At 28, she should have been somewhere warm, somewhere safe. Instead, she was here, watching her breath turn to fog, feeling the cold sink into her bones. The cashmere coat wrapped around her shoulders was the only thing standing between her and hypothermia. And in a few minutes, she wouldn't even have that. 3 hours ago, her father had thrown her suitcase down the marble steps of their mansion like it was garbage. Her mother had turned away, adjusting her pearls, too concerned with appearances to acknowledge that her daughter was being cast out into the freezing night. Her sister Vivica had smirked, the 6-carat engagement ring on her finger, catching the light. The ring that should have been on Mara's hand, given by the man Mara had loved for 4 years. But Darius had upgraded. That's what Vivica had called it, an upgrade. From the struggling black daughter to the successful one. From the failure to the winner. Mara pulled the coat tighter and tried not to think about the warmth. Inside those glowing mansion windows surrounding the park. Tried not to think about the fact that she had $47 to her name and nowhere to sleep after tonight. Tried not to think about how her own family had looked at her like she was nothing, like she was disposable. Her hands were shaking, but not just from the cold. From the humiliation. From the betrayal. From the crushing weight of being thrown away by the people who were supposed to love her unconditionally. Then she heard it. Footsteps crunching through the snow, slow and uneven. Through the white curtain of falling snow, a figure emerged. An old white woman, moving like death, was walking beside her. Mara's breath caught in her throat. The woman wore no coat, no shoes. Just a thin, tattered dress that clung to her skeletal frame, soaked through with snow. Her feet were bare against the frozen ground, turning blue. Her lips were gray. Her whole body shook with violent tremors that Mara could see from 20 feet away. The old woman stumbled, caught herself, kept moving forward. Her wild gray hair was plastered to her skull with wet snow. Her eyes, when they found Mara's, held something desperate. Something dying. "Excuse me," the woman's voice came out as a rasp, broken by chattering teeth. "Young lady, is there anywhere I can get warm? I'm so cold. I'm so cold. I'm so cold." Mara stood up fast, her own problems forgotten. This woman was dying. Right here, right now, in front of her. Nobody could survive in this weather dressed like that. "Ma'am, you need help," Mara started, but the woman's legs gave out. Mara lunged forward, catching her before she hit the ground. The woman's skin was like ice against Mara's hands. Up close, Mara could see that her lips weren't just gray. They were the color of death. Her fingernails looked like old bruises. "Ma'am, listen to me," Mara said, trying to hold the woman steady. "There's a fire station 6 blocks from here. Can you walk?" The old woman shook her head weakly. "Can't feel my feet. Can't feel anything." Mara's mind raced. 6 blocks might as well be 6 miles for this woman. She wouldn't make it. The wind was picking up, the temperature dropping by the minute. Mara looked down at her coat, a cashmere coat her mother had given her 3 years ago. Back when her mother had actually smiled at her and said happy birthday. It was warm, expensive, and right now, it was the only thing keeping Mara from freezing to death herself. The old woman's eyes were starting to close. No, stay with me," Mara said, shaking her gently. "Don't close your eyes." But Mara knew. She knew what she had to do. And the knowledge sat in her stomach like a stone. If she gave this woman her coat, she'd be down to just a thin sweater in 5-degree weather. She had no phone, no money for a cab, no way to get warm. She could die out here. The thought was so clear and simple, it almost made her laugh. Here she was, already at rock bottom, and the universe was asking her to dig deeper. She looked at the woman's gray lips. then at the warm houses surrounding them, their windows like eyes, watching but not helping. She thought about her father's cold voice. "Get out. Don't come back until you can stand on your own 2 feet." She thought about her sister kissing Darius like Mara had never existed. She thought about every moment of humiliation she'd endured tonight. And then Mara did something that surprised even herself. Her hands moved to the buttons of her coat. One by one, she undid them, her fingers clumsy with cold. The woman's eyes flickered open, confused. "What are you?" the woman tried to say. Mara said softly. "It's okay." She slipped the coat off her shoulders, and the cold hit her like a physical blow. Jesus, it was so much worse than she'd thought. The wind went right through her thin sweater, and she could feel goosebumps exploding across her entire body. Her breath came out in harsh gasps, but she didn't stop. She wrapped the coat around the old woman's shoulders, pulling it tight, making sure it covered as much of her as possible. "There," Mara said, and her voice was already shaking from the cold. "That's better." The woman stared up at her with wide eyes. "But you'll freeze." "I'll be fine," Mara lied. She was already not fine. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold them still. "Just stay warm." "Okay." The old woman pulled the coat tighter around herself, and Mara could see some color starting to return to her face. Good. That was good. Mara knelt down in the snow. God, it was so cold, and took the woman's hands in hers. They felt like ice sculptures, hard and frozen. Mara began to rub them gently, breathing warm air onto them, trying to get blood flowing back into those blue fingers. "You're going to be okay," Mara said, though her own teeth were starting to chatter. "You hear me? You're going to be okay." The old woman's eyes fixed on Mara's face, and there was something strange in her expression. Something sharp and assessing that seemed at odds with her frail appearance. She studied Mara for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was still weak, but somehow clearer. "Why?" the woman whispered. "Why would you do this?" Mara didn't have a good answer. She just shook her head and kept rubbing the woman's hands. "Because you needed it," she said simply. "Because nobody should have to freeze alone." The woman's eyes glistened with what might have been tears. "Kindness like yours," she said softly, "is rarer than a flawless diamond, child." Mara almost laughed at that. Kindness. She didn't feel kind. She felt stupid and scared and so cold that her bones hurt. But she kept rubbing the woman's hands, kept breathing warm air onto those frozen fingers. "Can you stand?" Mara asked after a minute. "We really need to get you somewhere warm." The woman nodded slowly. With Mara's help, she got to her feet, swaying but upright. She pulled the cashmere coat tighter around herself and looked at Mara one more time. "Thank you," she said, and then before Mara could respond, "What's your name, child?" Mara Vance." The old woman nodded, as if committing it to memory. "Mara," she repeated. "That's a beautiful name." And then she turned and shuffled away into the snow. Moving slowly but steadily, the coat wrapped around her like a cocoon. Mara watched her go until she disappeared into the white curtain of falling snow. Then she was alone again, sitting back down on the frozen bench in just her thin sweater and jeans. The cold was immediate and vicious. Within seconds, Mara was shaking harder than she ever had in her life. Her skin felt like it was burning and freezing at the same time. Her fingers were going numb. She wrapped her arms around herself and tried to think. The fire station? She needed to get to the fire station. But when she tried to stand, her legs felt weak and the world spun a little. Okay. Don't panic. She'd rest for just a minute, catch her breath, then she'd go. Mara sat there on the bench, shivering so hard her vision blurred, watching the snow fall, and wondering if maybe she'd just made the last mistake of her life. But weirdly, through all the cold and fear, she felt something else too. Something quiet but unmistakable. Peace, for the first time since her father had thrown her out. Since Darius had betrayed her, since her whole world had collapsed, Mara felt like she'd done something right, something that mattered. She'd given away everything she had left to a stranger, and somehow that felt more valuable than all the money her family had ever had. She didn't know it yet, but 20 feet away, hidden behind a snow-covered tree, someone was watching, recording, reporting back. The test was over, and Mara Vance had passed with flying colors. 1 hour later, Mara stood in the lobby of the Sunset Motel, a dump that smelled like cigarette smoke and desperation. The clerk had barely looked at her when she paid $20 for a room. Now she sat on a bed that felt like concrete, staring at the stained carpet, trying to process the fact that this was her life now. Her phone was dead. She'd let it die because she didn't want to see if anyone had texted, didn't want to confirm that nobody had. The phone rang, not her phone. The ancient landline on the nightstand that she hadn't even noticed. Mara stared at it as it rang once, twice, 3 times. Who the hell would be calling a motel room? Nobody knew she was here. On the 5th ring, Mara reached over and picked it up. Hello. There was a pause, then a woman's voice, warm and cultured. Miss Mara Vance. Mara sat up straight. Who is this? How did you? Please come outside to the parking lot. The woman said, someone wants to speak with you. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me who. But the line was already dead. Mara held the phone for a moment, her heart pounding. This was crazy. This was how people got murdered. But something in that voice had been not threatening. The opposite. It had been almost kind. And what did Mara have to lose? Her life was already over. Mara stood up, grabbed her thin sweater, and walked outside. The parking lot was mostly empty. A few beaten-up cars, a rusted pickup truck, nothing unusual. Then Mara saw them. 19 black SUVs arranged in a semicircle around the motel parking lot. Mercedes, Maybach, GLS 600s, every single one. The kind of vehicle that costs more than most people's houses. People had stopped on the sidewalk to stare. A couple across the street was taking pictures. Mara stood there frozen as the door of the center vehicle opened. A woman stepped out. Not the old woman from the park. Or rather, yes, it was her. Mara recognized the face, but she looked nothing like the dying vagrant from an hour ago. This woman wore a camel-colored Loro Piana coat that probably cost $50,000. Her silver hair was pulled back in an elegant bun. Hermes scarf. Louboutin heels. Behind her, 6 bodyguards in black suits arranged themselves in a protective formation. But it was her eyes that stopped Mara's heart. Sharp, assessing, intelligent. The eyes of someone who'd built empires and destroyed enemies. The woman walked forward, and Mara noticed she moved without any of the frailty from before. No shuffling, no weakness. Each step was confident and measured. Hello again, Mara, the woman said. Mara's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The woman smiled slightly. I believe I owe you a coat and an explanation. She gestured to one of her assistants, who stepped forward holding Mara's cashmere coat in a garment bag. Though I suspect the explanation is more important right now. Who are you? Mara whispered. My name is Emma Harrington. The woman offered her hand. The name hit like a blow. The Emma Harrington, Boston real estate titan. Head of the Harrington Foundation. I don't understand, Mara said. You were freezing. You were dying. Because you're kind, Emma said gently. Even with nothing, you gave everything. That's what I needed to see. This was a test. Mara's voice rose. I've been pretending to be homeless every Christmas for 25 years. Emma replied calmly. Mara stared, stunned. Emma gestured to the motel. Let's talk. They sat on folding chairs in the parking lot, a billionaire and a homeless woman under flickering lights. 25 years ago, I lost my daughter, Caroline, Emma said. She was 28, brilliant, kind. She died in a car accident while volunteering in Dorchester. Emma steadied herself. After she died, I realized money meant nothing. Only the good she'd done mattered. So every Christmas, I go looking for someone like her. How many? Mara asked. 247, Emma said. Politicians, executives, charity leaders. Every one of them failed. They offered help they wouldn't miss. No one gave what they needed themselves. She leaned forward. But you did. That coat was the only thing keeping you alive, and you gave it away. You didn't see race or status. You saw a human being. Mara swallowed. What do you want from me? Choice, Emma said, standing. I'm 70. I have $4 billion and no heir. The Harrington Foundation needs a leader who understands wealth is responsibility. Emma handed her a black card. Come to my office tomorrow at 8. 6 months. I'll teach you everything. Work harder than you ever have. If you succeed, the foundation is yours. If you fail, you leave with nothing. Why me? Mara whispered. I know everything about you, Emma said softly. Law school, public defense, pro bono work. I know you were abandoned tonight. I know you have $47, and I know you still gave away your coat. Tears fell freely now. So, Emma said, are you willing to fight for a better life for yourself and for others? Mara looked at the card, then up. I'll be there at 8. Emma smiled. Good. Tonight, you'll be warm. Tomorrow, your real life begins. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Mara, your family is going to regret what they did. Not because you'll punish them, but because they threw away something priceless. And by the time they realize it, it'll be too late. 6 months later, spring had arrived in Boston. Mara stood at the podium in front of the Second Home Project, the affordable housing development that had consumed so much of her energy. 200 apartments, bright and clean and safe. Rent capped at $400 a month for families making under $40,000 a year. A community center, a playground, a medical clinic. It was everything she dreamed of and more. 500 people came for the grand opening. Families seeking housing, local politicians, press, donors. In the front row, Emma and Sophia Martinez, the single mother Mara had helped during her training, watched. 4 years ago, Mara began, I sat on a park bench on Christmas night with nowhere to go. I'd lost everything. I thought my life was over. But a stranger saw something in me. I couldn't see kindness, strength, potential, and gave me a chance. This building isn't just housing, she continued. It's about second chances. People's value isn't their bank account or job. It's their heart, their will to keep fighting. She spotted Langston, Oilia, and Vivica in the crowd, transformed by months of hard work. Family isn't about blood, Mara said. It's who stands by you when you're falling, who lifts you up, who loves you at your worst. Sometimes it's also about forgiveness, recognizing people can change, that mistakes aren't permanent. She cut the ribbon. The crowd cheered. A little boy, James, ran up with wildflowers. Are you Miss Vance? He asked. I am. Thank you for giving us a home. Mara held him, seeing the future she fought for. Through the glass, her family watched. She gestured them inside. Slowly, they reunited. This doesn't fix everything, Mara said. I know, Langston replied. But it's a start. Emma and Sophia smiled. She reminds me of my daughter, Sophia said. Mara looked around the center, the city beyond, and felt it. Purpose, love, hope. The doors behind her were open. The doors ahead, full of possibility, were open too. Mara Vance, who once had nothing, now had everything that mattered.